have your, Snake Eyes fighting alongside General Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yay!
Yeah.
Can I put that in Fallen Order?
Yeah. No. Unlike some of the other games, their unlockables and aesthetic changes are severely limited.
They really are. Okay, well, I think we just lead into it. I think because we technically haven't named this thing yet, although we're bandying ideas about. I mentioned that because this one's coming before the other one. This is part one, and then the other one will be part 2.
Gotcha.
So, welcome, Ken.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's just you and me. I'm Andy.
I'm Ken.
Today, on, I guess, We Were Gamers Sud Pod. This one's about Star Wars, because why not cover every star that you can?
And then we have to cover Battlestar Galactica.
I would gladly do a Battlestar Galactica sub-pod. I have a feeling the same cast of characters willing to do the Star Wars sub-pod will also be on the Battlestar Galactica sub-pod.
Mm-hmm.
Because, man, I should just watch that again. A couple of years, so We Were Gamers. I'm off track already. But a couple of years ago, I had an idea, and I started rewatching Battlestar Galactica because I wanted to count in the entire series how many times they took off their glasses dramatically.
Okay.
And it's a lot, and I lost count, and I quit about halfway through season 1.
It's like, well, you only have, I'm thinking okay, you have moments for Adama, and you have moments for Rosalind. Oh, and then also Baltar. I'm like, okay, so already the number of people, and these are main cast members, so you're going to see that a lot. But it's outside of them,
Zarek, I think at some point.
Okay, yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that take their glasses off. That's all I'm saying.
The Starbucks. I have this image of Katie Sackhoff wearing aviators, but I'm pretty sure it's from one of the promotional things they did in a Starbucks with the original Starbuck.
No, I think she did have aviators when she's on Nuked Caprica, when she's driving around in her Humvee and just kicking it.
Yeah, she's like, Anders, what's up? Let's do our thing.
Yeah. Hey, there's people up here that played, what is it called? Blitzball? No.
Pyramid.
Pyramid, that's what it was. Well, that was a great segue into Star Wars.
Yeah, it's just right on topic.
All right, so what's the point? Why are we doing a sub-pod about Star Wars? Because I played a game called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and about halfway into it, I didn't want to finish it. I didn't want to. I felt like I was missing stuff. I felt like the universe was bigger than I knew. I felt like I was missing connections. And I felt like I didn't want that game to be over with because it was so good. So I just let it fallow for a little bit. And then
back in that world.
Well, and then I went back through and I started playing again, and I got really into Fallen Order. I got really good at the mechanics of it finally, and it finally hit me. And we'll talk about that in a minute, about Dathomir and the mistakes that I made. You already know. I don't just have to say the mistake of Dathomir, and you already know what I did.
Yeah.
And then I got to the point where you got to either choose to make all the cosmetics or you don't. And that's when we started talking about the game, you and me, directly. And that's when we had the idea to do this once the game was over, I think.
Yeah.
And that has led to a rabbit hole of starting to watch all of the Clone Wars because I'm a sucker for punishment and exploring the EU again. I don't know what they call it now.
It's just, now it's just
Disneyverse,
Star Wars. Yeah, it's just Star Wars. There's no they haven't had a moniker yet, aside from people saying, "Oh yeah, Disney Star Wars." I'm like, all right,
okay.
And EU. I mean, this is still extended universe,
Sure.
but I've fallen into, but I have fallen into the habit of calling everything, prior to Disney just Legends, because that's their official title, and it's an easy thing to throw out there, just as because then you're like, EU, like, what do you mean? And then like, oh, it's Legends, it's the old stuff.
They still brand all of those books. I mean, they still sell all those books, and they brand them now as Legends books. So like, you could go buy the X-Wing series still. They still have it in print. They just changed the cover to say Legends on it. So
yeah, and that's awesome. Like,
yeah, I'm into that.
Everyone who's complained like, oh, they got rid of it, and like, it's still right there.
Yeah,
like, they still want your money. They're still going to let you pay them and get more content. So
yeah, it's not
like,
going
I don't
away.
know what your problem is. Yeah,
it's not going away. People don't want to be told their favorite character doesn't exist anymore. I get why people are upset about it. I mean, like, I have multiple characters that I enjoyed reading. You grow up with Star Wars, and you attach yourself to weird side characters like Tycho Chelu.
Yeah, that's drawing a blank there.
Uh-huh.
Like, I really thought you were going to say Corran Horn, and I'm like, okay, I'm with you. But
I'm just saying. See what I mean? Like, I like Corran Horn quite a bit, and he's probably like my first or second favorite character in that old EU, because he's the focus of so many books. Like, it's weird how that X-Wing series really evolves into his story at a certain point, from being like Wedge's story. But there's a series of Rogue Squadron comic books from Dark Horse, and Wedge starts forming Rogue Squadron with a guy named Tycho Chelu from who's a ex-TIE fighter pilot.
Okay.
I don't know.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
like I said,
I pulled up Wikipedia, so
yeah. See, I think he's Alderaanian.
Yeah, he is.
See, but you don't want to be told, and I understand why people would be upset, because you don't want to be told like that weird information about one offside Star Wars character. Doesn't matter.
I mean, it doesn't matter and I think that's part of it, is that the people still want to have their nerd cred. They still want to have that badge on their shirt saying like, no, I know that, that to kill Chewbacca, they dropped the moon on him. Like, they want to have that information and drop it on you, because part of nerddom for a long while has just been one-upsmanship, and it still is, but we're trying to move past it, but here we are.
I'd call it brinkmanship, right? Like, it's just a big game of chicken until you both give up.
Yeah. Well, and it's the thing too, is like, because then it's also that there's always different types of people. Like, I was at, I want to say one of the I think it was Last Jedi. Yeah, it was Last Jedi, and we were about to go in, and a friend I was there with friends, and then one of them brought their kids, and he's like, so which is your favorite ship? And I'm like, oh, I like the A-Wing a lot. And he's like, oh, but that can only go this fast. And I'm like, oh, different nerd. Like, you're going like the stats side of it. Like, this ship can go this fast, and it can.
You don't have a Star Wars technical manual? Come on, man.
I don't. I mean, of everything that I have here, I don't have a Star Wars technical manual.
I have a Star Wars technical manual with ships that no longer are canon.
Those are one of the cool things that I think is kind of interesting to see. What's like, a lot of the ships and a lot of the technical aspects stayed canon. Like, there's like, oh, we'll just bring that over.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to affect anyone's story for the most part. Like, they may say you'll have a story arc like introducing the new TIE Interceptor, but other than like for the basics, they're like, yeah, you can still have that ship. Like, oh, hey, that's a YT-11 or whatever the Outrider is. Like, you'll have those ships pop up still. And I love that. Like, that was one thing that was like, when you're mentioning like you slowed down on wanting to finish some of Jedi Fallen Orders, because you're like, oh, I feel like I'm missing stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, there's definitely stuff there where it's like, if you've been on board with the new stuff, they're definitely giving you like, hey, little nod.
Yeah.
And it's fun. But if you're on the outside, you're like, what is this? Why? Okay, those guys look familiar. I think I know what's going on here.
Yeah.
And it's enough.
There's a lot of reference to like, okay, so Jedi Fallen Order, we should just talk about, is a game that takes place shortly after, but not like super close to the end of the Clone War and the rise of the Empire, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of the main character dealing with fallout from the Clone War as well as the very immediate loss of the Jedi Order. He's probably maybe been, like he was 12 or so, would you guess, when he was in training and Order 66 happens?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing off the top of my head. I didn't look it up, but
yeah, but just from the way he looked and stuff in the flashbacks,
he's a kid.
Spoilers, you get flashbacks. And,
oh man, that's so good. So the game starts out and you're in hiding on a planet and you're wrecking ships, and like to me, I had no attachment to those ships, right? But now that I've watched Clone Wars, when I think about that opening scene to the game and how he's wrecking those cruisers, now I would understand that, like, oh man, he was a Padawan during the Clone War. Like Ahsoka, he spent most of his life on these ships that he's destroying because he's working in a wrecking yard ripping apart old ships. And he finds like a Jedi fighter, which I've seen before, but like you didn't realize like that would have like some emotional impact for him. And so there's a lot of like character building that's built into the stuff of the Star Wars universe right from the beginning, that you don't need to know the story of the Clone Wars to maybe get it, but you definitely have to have the emotions of having been in the Clone Wars to like feel the full impact of it early on.
Yeah.
And so once I started watching Clone Wars and went back to the game later, I definitely like felt more attached to his story and like how rough it was on him and all that kind of stuff.
That's awesome, and that's kind of the fun of when you have these stories of it's not our core characters. You get to have like, oh, this is a side character, but because you are informed by everything else that you've partaken, you're like, oh, like he sees that Jedi interceptor and he's just like, he's touching it, and his friend's like, what's up, dude? Like, why does that matter to you? He's like, oh, nothing. Like, he has that moment, and it lands. It's good to hear, like, going back, it kind of lands better for you. You're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, that's seeing what that meant to him emotionally.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the game does that the whole way through. So, I don't know if you want to talk about the story first, well, let's talk about the mechanics first, because then I have a lot of comments on the story. But had you ever played a Dark Souls style game before?
No, I hadn't. And kind of on purpose, because I just heard they're so punishing. Yeah. And like they like, oh, you're meant to die repeatedly, and like, right, cool, not for me. Like, I've got other games that that's why we were gamers, because there's always that stack of games. Is because like I've got other stuff to go through. Yeah, there's no way at this point in our lives that we can keep up with everything, and so like, whereas before I would finish whatever I was doing, work, whatever, and I'd just hop on a game and that would be it. And then I'd, go through 3, 4, 5 games a month. Now it's one game every couple months, right? So committing to a game that's 20 to 30 hours long, committing to a game that is admittedly upfront punishing to you as a player. That first time you walk through a door and there's a guy on the other side that you couldn't see that jumps you, and you can see the meditation circle, and you're like, I just need to get there. I'm out of stims, you jerk. Like, that moment is very frustrating, but you feel really good when you start to do the little waggle with the stick before you go through a door, so you can see both sides of the opening. And sometimes you'll catch the dude's little like stun baton sitting on the other side, and you're like, I see you there. So there's a satisfaction that I didn't expect in how grueling some of the combat is in that game. I don't know about you, but I actually didn't lose a boss fight at any point. I lost to the bounty hunters twice because they're unfair. Because there's multiple of them at times, or
because it seems like their combos are randomized, maybe.
And also the pairing too, like depending on. sometimes you'll get the jetpack one, and then you'll get the guy who's a shield charger.
Right, so you can't get to the jetpack guy because you keep getting bounced off the shield charger. But then sometimes, like the first time I ran into a bounty hunter, I thought it was going to be super easy forever because I got 2 shield chargers, and I was like, well, I just keep sidestepping and whacking them as they go by and slowing them and then hitting them, and like this is just a rinse-repeat kind of thing, which a lot of the combat gets to become. I mean, not all the boss fights end up that way. But there's definitely some of the combat which is a rinse-repeat, and there's a satisfaction in learning a combo like that. But the bounty hunters gave me a lot of trouble. But the boss fights are unique, I thought. It's standard Dark Souls, which is what from what I've heard, standard Dark Souls, which is you have a move set. Your move set is advanced by your weaponry. In this case, single, double. Spoilers, by the way, single, double, and split lightsabers.
And then complemented by force powers.
Oh yeah. So, did you like that? Did you like gating it like that?
Yeah.
We'll talk about how it's gated in the story section.
Yeah. And that's one thing too when people say like, "Oh, I want a new game plus." It's like, but because of the way the story is built and the way that it is, like I'm okay with that gating, so it's like you can't have that replay value in that same way.
It really doesn't, and that's really unfortunate to me. I would liken this game in my enjoyment of it to Assassin's Creed 1, where I was a PC gamer a lot, and I had just gotten an Xbox for the first time, for the Xbox 360 for the first time. So like I had an old Xbox, I was good at shooters, but I wasn't like really into that style, Assassin's Creed style game. I played Assassin's Creed 1, and I loved it instantly, and immediately upon finishing it, I couldn't find my last achievement. I had 99 out of 100 achievements, and I replayed the whole game immediately. Not a joke, just like...
Yeah, you're like, where's that other one? What happened to it? Like, what did I miss?
I didn't get all... And that's a We Were Gamers moment, by the way. Because I had the time to be like, well, it'll probably only take me like 12 to 16 hours to finish it the second time, so that's like only a week of nights.
Everything is for the most part. Like, I'll remember it.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, I don't think Fallen Order hits that note for me because everything is cosmetic, first of all.
Yeah.
It's not like playing it again, I will be able to get the stuff I missed the first time because a lot of it is gated still. Like, oh, I have to go back to Bogano at the very end of the game to be able to get everything. I have to go back. Now, maybe the second time around you know better and you don't pick up any chests. And so you just do the thing where you get the story done and then like right before you go to the final planet, you go back through each one and sweep it for chests or something. But the chests take a long time in that game and there's really no benefit to it.
Yeah, I mean that's part of like the whole like the
you get experience.
Yeah, you get experience, but I'm like by that point you've already unlocked all your force powers. Like you have the full tree, so you're like, okay,
did you unlock the whole tree?
I want to say actually maybe I didn't.
I did
but I know that I unlocked most of it, and I was kind of like, well, like I know I didn't unlock certain like level 2 or level 3 powers.
Oh, okay. Because
in my gameplay style, I didn't use them that often.
Right.
Like I didn't throw my lightsaber that often. I didn't use that.
That's the one I didn't get. I actively worked my way around the grid in every other direction. And I said, if I have enough powers left at the end of the game, I'll unlock the single-bladed lightsaber throw. But my playstyle was much more of my favorite move was to use force pull and stab people.
Yeah.
And like that's it. And like the whirlwind throw of the double bladed was good. I used single bladed a lot because it did so much more damage that even in groups I would kind of like try to push the groups back and do more damage with the single. Okay. Slicing I used a lot, and then the split bladed block I used a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
I really wish you could get a lot more force than they allowed you to get, so that you could, or at least So you have to be really good at parrying. It turns out, which is a tough skill to master because everybody's attack speed is different. So you have to master parrying each opponent and what the speed is for them.
Yeah.
Whereas it's much easier to get a perfect dodge with the B button, right? You're just like, okay, he's about there. Yeah. I know how fast I dodge. I dodge like this. So it's kind of hard to just use force all the time, which is, I guess, what their point is. You still have to do the fighting.
Yeah, but it's so much more fun.
It really is to take a zip line and jump into the midst of a stormtrooper pile and just be like, I have the upgraded force push, so I shove you all off this bridge at one time with a click of a button.
Yep.
And that weird power fantasy of becoming a stronger Jedi, I think, is one of the biggest appeals of that game.
Yeah.
Is like, we could talk about now. I went to, you go to Bogano early in the game, and I went to Dathomir after Bogano instead of to Ilium. No, it's not Ilium. It's not Ilum. So what's the planet that they made up for this game? Whatever made up planet it was.
Zepho.
Yes, Zepho. With the race of Zephonians who we'd never heard of before either. I wish they had just said that they were the Force wielders from Clone Wars.
Which ones?
The father and son and daughter.
Oh, well, I mean, that would have been. I mean, that could have been. They could have been interesting, but you have a very small cast of characters. Then you're very much overlapping, and also with the way, spoilers for that episode, they ended kind of like, did that happen?
Yeah, like, okay. Yeah, I get it. I just wish it would actually have made that episode of the show better if if those three people weren't just randomly like, are these the magic force in people? Versus like, oh, hey, by the way, if you play Fallen Order, you find out that those people were part of a race of like super force sensitive people that are now extinct. And they have a good story later on in the game that explains like, hey, just because you think you're powerful doesn't mean you can prevent your own extinction, you know? Yeah. So I went to Dathomir first. And that's where I learned that this game really wants you to go in order.
They want you to go in order, but they don't limit you, which is kind of nice.
They do,
like,
though.
They're like, you shouldn't go here, but if you do,
but you can't. See, that's the thing. They don't. They tell you you're not limited, but you can't do 2/3 of that planet at all without going to the rest of the game first. You need the force powers to get through most of it.
Correct, but you can get to your double-bladed lightsaber on that first stop.
Did you get yours there?
Yeah. It's like there, because there's like there's a chamber you go into, and that's where the first two Zabrak force users are there. And if you just pass them, like you'll go down a path and you come around a corner, and inside there is one of the very first modification tables. Okay. And that's where you unlock your double blade lightsaber.
What was the upgrade that I got on Bogano then?
Bogano was...
Because I got a lightsaber upgrade on Bogano, and I attached What's-His-Face's old saber to my saber, and I thought that was a double-bladed upgrade.
No, attaching the other lightsaber is... I want to say it might be back on Bogano once you go back at the end, but that's for the split saber more than it's for the double-bladed.
You get the split saber... You get the split saber when you get your crystal on Ilum.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what you do on Bogano then, as far as
I thought I got my double-bladed saber on Bogano.
Yeah, no, it's on Dathomir.
Huh.
And I do remember, like, I'm trying to remember, like, the tables, and I think you do get some upgrades right away for that. Like, I definitely know that there's some cosmetic stuff that open up, but...
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother section of this podcast, too.
Man, dude.
Yeah.
I spent so much time, and I really shouldn't have. I really shouldn't have.
It's cross promotion, so you spend more money at the parks.
Do you think that was the point? Because a lot of, if not most of those pieces are pieces you can get at. Let's just talk about it now. So
okay,
starting early on not that early on. You have to get to the Mantis first.
Yeah.
And then you can't do anything on the Mantis unless you have the collector's edition until after Bugano. Okay. You have to get through some of Bugano to get to your first workbench to do anything. Yeah. But I had the collector's edition, so I could go to the workbench on the Mantis and change my lightsaber color from green to blue to orange or whatever. Mm-hmm. Other than the saber color, until you get the double-bladed, it's kind of hard to see what you've done on your character as he runs around, but they did a good job once you get the double one of making sure you could see it, even on the character.
They duplicate the emitter, so it's there. And it's
I was impressed. I was really impressed. And they hang it the right way. Spoilers again. Once your saber breaks and you have to use Syrah's lightsaber to back up your other half, which I thought was that was cool. A really good moment story-wise. They do a good job. They hang it upside down, so your emitter is the one that's easier to see, which is cool. What are all the pieces? Not all the pieces are available from the Savi's
workshop. So there's a good majority of them that are at Savi's. And the thing was too, on the initial, because Ebony and I went during the preview time, and in that period you were actually able to buy extra pieces of scrap.
Yeah, I really wish.
Dude, I wish I had at the time too. And so now it's just everything is locked down. Like you have to buy a whole lightsaber to get any extra scrap pieces.
Oh.
Like you can't so you can't mix and match as much. Like you get your tray full of, I want to say 4 sleeves, 2 emitters, 2 pommels, and 2 switches, and just mix and match until you find your configuration that you want to do. And that's of the 4 different tray styles that there are.
Okay.
So you go in and you do this and you get it's well worth it to me for the amount of stuff you get, like a pin, which is Disney. Like they're like, oh, you get a pin for that too. You get the pin, you get the lightsaber, you get a carrying case, the blade. It's all so good. But the funnest part is the experience they give you, which if you want to ruin it, you can go online, but I definitely recommend, if trying to save yourself, to experience it. But building it and choosing which pieces you want to use.
So I kept my save game so I could go back to my workbench and just pre-build my Savi's saber, because it seems like to me, based on the pictures that I've seen and the trays that I looked at the preview at Disneyland, these are all the same pieces.
I'd say 80% of them for sure. Except the ones that are clearly not are when you have Sears and Topals.
Yeah.
And
God, if they could make a Topal one at Disney.
Yeah, that emitter is that's the one you see on the cover. That's the one that was part of that of the promotional art from the start. And that's
the one that's in his toy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's that's the one that you get attached to. And then there's Cordova's too, and you get all these different pieces.
Right.
And so it's except for the character ones, the majority of them are all Savi pieces to a degree. Okay. There's I think there's 2 different, because one of them I'm remembering now. There's a leather wrap section that I want that's on the nature one that's not on any other one, but it's also on Sears. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I'm kind of concerned about, trying to do that, to get off track a bit. But I would love to do that Disney thing and be able to mix and match from other trays somehow. I don't know if the pieces would actually fit together. I assume they would.
Oh, they do. They 100% do.
Yeah.
There's besides Ebony and I messing around with ours at home after we're back, there's YouTubers and stuff that have gone out and said they've essentially they've pulled every piece from doing multiple buys, which I'm like, okay, cool. You're just yeah. It's insane. And they've done multiple buys. They're you can just kind of mix and match all of them. It's all modular, just whatever you want.
And they're all metal pieces too.
Yes, all the pieces are metal except for the inner core, which is plastic.
Yeah, but who cares because you're not touching it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get it back on track. Did you customize your saber, and for how long? In the game, not in life, because I don't want that answer. It's too depressing.
I customized it and I did it constantly. Every time I unlocked a new piece, I was like, okay, well, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And I went through and I think I got every piece of cosmetic pieces for the saber, my outfits, the mantis, like
You
all
did
that.
all of it. You got 100% of everything.
Of all the cosmetic stuff. I didn't get
Wow.
all of the journal pages. I do know that.
Okay.
Like if I want to, I can go back and do that, but that's going to be a time. That's going to, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. Because you'd have to go through a whole new game to do that.
No, because they want you beat it. You still have the save, and you can go back, but it's before you go to the final area.
Oh, so you'd have to like try and get back to the mantis somehow?
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember because like when I start up from the old save, I'm in the mantis.
Oh, before you get into the water planet.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That would make me more inclined to try and 100% my old save then.
Yeah. So because you start in the mantis and you can just choose, okay, I'm going to go back to Kashyyyk, and I mean, that there's shit there that takes forever to try and go all the way up to the top of this tree and back down and oh man,
that's the reason I didn't want to do. Okay. Were we talking about Dathomir? Yeah. So you learn real quickly there that like unless you're very, 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 very good, enemies that are outside your power range are outside your power range because the game wants them to be.
Yeah.
Because later on, I went back and I fought those Zabrak, yes, and they were no problem. Like reflecting a shot back or whatever. Learning, what an unblockable attack is then versus doing it through the rest of the game normally is different. And yeah, so were you put off by the order of it or no? Like the very meticulous, like you got to go to this planet, then you got to leave that planet and go to the other planet, then you got to come back to, like it was like Bugano, Zepho, Kashyyyk, Zepho, Kashyyyk, Dathomir, back to Bugano, then to Ilum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then,
and that's the thing. It's very Metroidvania in that way of like, oh well, you couldn't do the morph ball yet, so you can't get into this cavern.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
And because we're old school gamers, like Metroidvania is fine with us. Like, okay, no, I know how to adapt to that. So it's like, oh, now that I have the force double jump, I can now access that one area. So I was regularly going back to Bogano anyways, because I'm like, okay, I got that new power. And now that I can force pull, I can do that vine that I saw. Because I remember, and that's one thing that kind of annoyed me was that they didn't do a good job in the beginning of showing you what your limitations were.
No, so it was really hard to understand on the map. Like, oh, that tiny little speck of red tells me that I can't go there yet. Yeah.
And that I can see that the force power is active there, but I can I spent half an hour on one part trying to leap and do it like leap and slow. I'm like, do I just keep missing it? Only to be like, okay, do I turn to back in the day it would have been strategy guys, but do I turn to the internet? And I'm like, okay, how do you get that sphere? I'm like, oh, I looked it up. I'm like, oh yeah, you have to have force push 2 for that. I'm like, F you game, like show me, like give me a better indicator that this is being hidden behind a wall for me. Like let me know that. Like I spent an hour trying to do like half an hour to an hour just like leaping and missing. And missing. I'm like, okay.
I did a very similar thing where I tried to take down one of the legendary creatures.
Oh,
on the one on Bogano.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
The one on Bogano, I ran into it because I was exploring, and you can explore that direction. It's not locked off.
Yeah.
There's no way without force powers other than force slow, which you start the game with, to beat that thing. No way.
Yeah. And they don't give you any indicator that like
nope.
Like, oh, you shouldn't go this way just yet. Like with Dathomir, they're like, oh, there's another planet I should go to. I don't know. It seems pretty dangerous. At least there's that seems pretty dangerous part.
Yeah.
There's nothing else saying like, hey, that giant frog up there is going to kick your ass. Like, okay, thanks.
There's definitely a lot of the mechanical stuff that I hope gets smoothed out when they do a sequel to this, because this is not a spoiler to say, I think that they will make another game in this series. It doesn't have to be a Cal Kestis game or anything else like that to be a sequel. I think they'll use this system that they've created here to make another game.
Yeah, and I hope there's a lot more polish and time put into it, though, because there's lots of things that were like we the other day, Andy just started playing a game with me called State of Decay 2, which is a very like small indie house game. Like, yeah, they're owned by Microsoft, but it's a $30 game. It's not a $60 game, a $70. There's no elite package for $100.
Right.
And
smart business model too, I think.
Yeah.
Make cheaper games to see who will play them. Maybe you get, a little bit of money.
Yeah. But when I play that game, I expect a certain level of quality. Like, okay, if there's clipping issues, if things don't work out right, I'm okay with that. I'm prepared for that. But when games like this have issues where like you'll be standing on a ledge and then suddenly the ledge is gone and you'll fall through it, or especially in that first area where you're on the train tracks and you're trying to escape the stormtroopers.
Horrible.
There's so many instances where it's like, oh, like I'll clip through a wall and just the visuals. I'm like, there's visual things that kind of go in and out for me, and then there's also like, oh, I'm missing. Like I jump and I miss something. I'm like, I was pretty clearly on it, but because there's instances where this game needs more polish, and
Absolutely.
I feel like they were. And I watched because we both got the special edition, and you can watch the making of. They are so happy with themselves. Like, man, we made Star Wars history. I'm like, you could have done better though. Like you kind of like got to the like we got good enough. Yeah, I'm like,
I don't want to be disparaging in that way. I think that they did a pretty dang good job overall. There are significant issues, especially with the camera, that I don't understand how they just choose not to fix it. I had multiple times where an enemy would block me into a corner, and for some reason I couldn't rotate the camera, so all I can see is the top of my head because the camera is stuck up against the wall. Yeah. And it won't rotate, and so I can't get moved out of the corner because he's up against me. I can't fight correctly because I can't see. I can't lock on because the camera won't move. I can't. So like, I know that issue had to have come up in playtesting. It happened to me 5 or 6 times fighting up against Inquisitor, Purge Troopers.
Yeah.
And so, they're happy with themselves because they made a good game.
Yeah, they made a really good game.
They made a really good game, and I think they should be happy. And I think for the second time they use this system, they had better tweak that stuff, because if that's still in there, that speaks to cutting corners the second time out.
Yeah, and that's what I just wanted a little more polish on the game. I think that there's definitely times where I think, we discussed earlier the parrying system, and I'm like, there's times where I'm like, no, I fought this Purge Trooper a dozen times. I know his timing. I parried that, and he just went straight through. I'm like, come on, there's times where I was struggling to understand, is it the format of the game to be punishing, or I'm missing the parry, or is the parry not being connected, and it's something in the game, and like there's times where I'm like, okay, yeah, that was on me. I'm a moron. I should have got that. And there's times where I'm like, no, I pretty clearly hit the button like at the right time.
Yeah, I definitely had moments where maybe I wasn't as on it as I normally was, especially like in a boss fight. I would kind of leave a boss fight for each game session, and then I wouldn't do another one because they require too much attention to detail and like being on top of your controller, like physically on top of it while so you have the quickest reaction you can have. And there were times that I would fight, especially like K2SOs, and they would grab me, and I'd be like, man, I really must just not be like on my game because I'm not dodging the grab correctly or whatever. So I think it's more of a punishing is first, and maybe maybe the timing is off sometimes because of other issues. I definitely had issues where I would have swings miss because the ground wasn't level.
Yeah.
And you're like, why am I attacking the ground? Why wouldn't the character auto attack up?
Yeah.
Like, not like I'm on a different level, but like it's just a grade of ground. You know, like the grade is 5%, and so my lightsaber hits the ground, but his attacks are hitting me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he has the high ground.
Oh, God.
See?
I didn't. I clearly. I mean, like if Anakin couldn't figure it out, I'm not gonna figure it out.
Yeah, and it's definitely like there. It's not that it's like all the time that it's the game. There's definitely times where I'm missing stuff too.
Yeah,
and I'm like, and so it's like, but there's when it's not me, and I feel like it's the game. I'm like, I'm left wondering. I'm like, come on, like where was the? I don't know.
I think
another pass, but
yeah, I think another pass over the combat. Reworking the bounty hunters so they can't have unfair combos. Trying to fix those quick combat bugs like the attack timings or the camera bugs in combat. And they've got a real solid second game. I kind of hope they would add a version of fast travel, maybe like a different space dock, so that like issues like Kashyyyk don't happen again. Where like if you want to go back for stuff, like you don't have to run 30 minutes across the planet into the jungle,
back out of the jungle.
It's literally 30 minutes, right? Like to get there for one cosmetic chest, which I'm not going to do at this point because I was a gamer, and then run 30 minutes back. It's the same problem on Zepho. Like Zepho has such a big map that there's
Yeah, I went back for all those chests. I went back and I was like, okay, what's this? How do I get here? And it's...
Part of it is a fun challenge of like,
yeah,
I see that chest. I'm going to figure out how to get it. And like, or like, I missed one here. It says I missed one here. I can find that. And that in the Zepho temples, that was easy, right? Because you could always get them each time. Because you couldn't get them at the beginning, but at the end, you had the power to get to the chest you couldn't get. And redoing a Zepho temple from the beginning would only take you 5 minutes once you had the power from the temple.
Yes, but then you still had to go, like, if you go all the way into where the lower access is, then you go down the lower access, and then you have to go around, like, that's where it's just, I'm with you, like, isn't there a port, like, couldn't they have landed on that dock over there? Yeah. And I just come in from the side?
Yeah.
Thanks? No?
Yeah. Okay. Like, okay, there's a gigantic platform here that I stood on to have this very cinematic scene that you created with a Star Destroyer picking up stuff from Zepho. We could fit the Mantis on this ledge. I'm just saying. And that's like halfway through the planet.
Yeah.
It
was a great reveal at the time. I appreciated it.
Yeah.
But now that we're past it...
Can we reuse this platform for something else? Oh, man. Maybe that's a New Game Plus feature or whatever. You know, just like a nod to the fact that like these worlds, they're very massive. And you know, talking to JJ, this is a Dark Souls thing too. Although they have bonfire fast travel in those later games. So you can go between meditation points, which would be a good addition too. I don't even need that. I mean, if you did just like one fast travel point on each planet or something. But being able to jump between meditation points would be helpful in the future.
Oh, sure.
I don't know. I don't have a ton to say. If you love Dark Souls combat, this is cool. I probably would, now having played this and knowing what Dark Souls combat is, I'm sad that I own a Dark Souls game that I probably will never play because it's not skinned with Star Wars.
Yeah, and that's definitely part of it, is just like the skin of it. You have my attention. Like I'm the guy who's read, you know, all the Quinlan Vos comics because I just love Quinlan Vos. So like, let's read them all. And some of them, you know, are not as good as others, but I'm gonna keep coming back because Star Wars has my heart. Like, it's gonna keep coming back every time. Like, I want to say there's another game that I played recently that there was the same thing as another one of the mobile games. Actually, I played multiple mobile games for Star Wars that are just like, oh well, I mean, it's Star Wars, so I'll play another.
You're the sucker.
Tower defense.
You're the guy.
Yeah, I'm the sucker.
You're the guy.
I'm not a whale though, so they're not getting anything from me. They're just getting my, at most $5 for the starter pack, and then I fall out of it.
They gave you arthritis though.
True, very true.
I think though, even with a Star Wars skin, to be honest, while the game is mostly polished, if it had a very standard story like a Dark Souls game may have, I can't say, but I know the first Dark Souls is literally just like, you're a hero and you want to be a skeleton king or something. It's very nebulous. I've had people try to describe it to me, and it's kind of a nebulous fantasy hero story with this crazy skinned Dark Souls world on it. And since I'm not into skeletons and zombies and stuff like that, it kind of got very little appeal to me. If this game didn't have a strong story backing, I think also I would have fallen off in the middle as well. Because there's a moment where you start to figure out what the story's gonna do, and it's kind of like, okay, I kind of want to see how this goes, how this plays out, how these characters interact. And so I think it's unjust for us not to talk about the story a little bit. So this is your last spoiler warning, people.
Yeah.
Cal Kestis is kind of a whiny character a little bit, but thankfully he has reason to be, I guess.
Yeah.
He's a kid.
His experience has led him here, yeah.
Yeah, his experience is what it is, and he's a kid that's hiding out on a planet, in the middle of a war, and really kind of got dropped into what his situation is. He's not benefited by the fact that his facial animations don't really add up all the time.
Yeah.
But I think his growth in the game is pretty large, especially towards the end after you meet the Night Sister, and you get through her full story and she joins the Mantis and all that. But it's a kind of a standard like find the MacGuffin story at the beginning, right? You start on Braca. A lot of B planets in this game.
Yeah, Braca.
You start on Braca. You get saved by Sierra and Grizz from the second sister, who has figured out that you're a Jedi because you tried to save your buddy who still gets aced.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a bummer.
But it plays well though, because it does
play really well.
And that character is more than just a sacrificial lamb in that. Like they give him some character. Yeah,
it was really good, right?
Yeah.
Like you get the feeling, and there's more to that Braca stuff because there's stuff in the trailers that's animated and not in the game.
Yeah.
Like a train ride, a dream vision, that kind of stuff happens in a trailer that's not in the game. So it's kind of weird that they did that. But you do this train escape, and before you get saved by Sierra, and the first flashback happens. And you kind of get the feeling like it's not going to be the last one. How long did you stand at the doorway before you realized you had to turn around?
I purposely was trying, like, okay, let's see. I was testing it. Like, okay, I won't turn around. And he just kept talking, like, hey, come on. Hey, come on. And I'm like, what happened? Because I'm always curious sometimes, like, with the strings, like, where, like, if I don't go forward, do they have something programmed to propel me forward then? And so I sat there for a good long while just testing it. Nothing happened. So I just finally, I think, turned around or took a step forward and then turned around, and I did the prompting they wanted me to. Yeah,
of course.
But I was very curious if they were going to be like, oh no, if you don't, like, some kind of additional dialogue prompt starts up, and it doesn't.
No,
it's just a repeat.
It's a repeat. Yeah. It's a little bit of a bummer, but it's not a huge bummer. It's so hard to program that much stuff into a game. It was a cool moment, I think, to like have you turn around and all of a sudden you're on an Imperial ship.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, like where, and then your friend's gone, and it plays out really well. It plays out so well, and And it's funny too because it's like I'm thinking about it from the position of having read other Star Wars media in the recent stuff, and like you can see notes of other characters and kind of the way their stories played out and how
Sure.
he's coming to grips. Again, it's a survivor of Order 66, and how does that affect him, and how does he function in that world? And see, because you read the Kanan novels, and he functions differently than Kanan did. Kanan didn't have the same experience,
Really?
and so it's like
So
not the same exact experience. So
yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
just real fast. Like Kanan wasn't. I mean, he was obviously somebody tried to execute him because he hates clones.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah, so he was on planet with his troopers and his master, and kind of the same thing happens. Like, hey, get out of here.
His
But, I mean, we've already
master gets aced. Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked about already the spoilers, but it's like it's a lot quicker for Kanan. He runs, and so he deals with that idea of abandoning people,
Mhm.
whereas he did Cal didn't really abandon his master. Like he got separated from him when they crashed down, but it was a different feeling. So it's like Kanan does a better job of hiding and staying calm, whereas Cal's a lot more scared
Right.
in the scenarios. So it's kind of interesting to see those differences in how they approach the scenarios.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool to have this kind of era of Star Wars explored by multiple pieces of media, because it's such a seminal moment now for most of the series, right? That they're making prequels about it now, and they're going back, and they did a new season of that show just to talk about that era, and Kanan is a character that focuses on that era. This game focuses. It's cool that they're doing it and that they've thought through what it was like for each of these people, and one of those people is Seer, yeah. Seer, who is the one that saves you and takes you to Bogano and says, "Hey, my old master left a holocron that tells us how to rebuild the Jedi Order. I've been looking around for other Jedi. You're the Jedi. I'm not a Jedi anymore, so you have to get the holocron."
Yeah.
That's about it, right? Like, I'm not a Jedi.
Yeah.
I've cut myself off from the Force because bad things happen because of me, and I'm done with the Force. Otherwise, I'm going to turn to the dark side. Which is she does a good job, and that's over the course of the game, right? That's not the first minute. Basically, she says, "I've been looking for Jedi, and I need your help to get a holocron," and we slowly find out about her character and how also damaged she is, not by as much by Order 66, but by the fact that as a Jedi Master, she failed to say Joro T'Pol. God, that's a hard one. Joro T'Pol, sacrificed for Cal, and Seer couldn't do it for what's the second sister's actual name? Can't remember her name.
Yeah, I'm forgetting now too.
It's funny because the last half of the game they use her name, but I just know her second sister. It's cool. It's a cool juxtaposition for like either your master died or they betrayed you. That's the way that it went for most Jedi. There's no combination where anybody comes out of it unscathed. And so you kind of figure that out through Seer until the end of the game. Grizz is an interesting character, though he doesn't have much to do other than complain and get you in trouble with the bounty hunters.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you kind of... His story, it's interesting because, like, in the beginning, I was much more intrigued by, like, okay, what is Seer's story? And then as we introduce more characters, I'm like, they're kind of more, like, at the beginning, I'm curious what's going on with them more than I am with Cal.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
as time goes on, we like, oh, okay, we kind of see more and more of what's going on with Cal. And there's times where I think he's more, as much as he's more emotionally, like, variant, he's more closed down, too. It's interesting, like, at certain moments, he's very closed in on himself. Like, when he finds out what happened with Seer the first time, he's like he doesn't
talk to her. He can't talk to her.
Yeah.
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 And it's cool.
And
It's cool that it plays into the idea of the Metroidvania style because he's so closed off. He's been closed off from the Force. He's closed off from his past. And so emotionally and story-wise, he's a closed off character. He's a siloed character who is experienced through these characters that will talk. Seer, Grizz, Saul Guerrera, who shows up in this game, which is super cool, and also one of those moments that like I was like, I should watch other things because Saw's cool in this, but I know he's not cool by Rogue One. So what's the deal here? And playing through the Kashyyyk really plays into who Saw is as a character, and you're kind of like, oh, I kind of don't like this guy very much. He's kind of a jerk. He's just abandoning this planet because he doesn't want to be here anymore with all the Wookiees to see, and he's going to leave him to slavery. It's like, whoa, okay, cool. I'm glad I had that moment to experience Saw's character and experience it through the lens of Cal, who is starting to come out of his shell and get his Force powers. And yeah, he doesn't talk much at the beginning of the game. And he doesn't do much at the beginning of the game. He doesn't have any powers at the beginning of the game. And to realize that all those things are not, they're not mistakes. They're interconnected so that slowly over the course of the game, you're going to develop your own character through Cal, right? Like you're going to experience what he experiences in becoming what he wasn't. He wasn't a Jedi. He's not like, I'm a Jedi Knight and I know everything and I was just in hiding. It's like, he was a Padawan. Like, he never had a master. The master died. Like, he taught him how to use the Force, but he didn't teach him the stuff that you see other masters in Star Wars media teaching, right? Like, they don't get the Masonic traditions and Platonic theory of how to control their emotions and connect to the world and all that. So he doesn't have any of that.
Yeah. I'm curious, had you watched all of Rebels by the time you started playing this? Or was it like halfway through when you kind of went on pause? Is that when you watched Rebels?
I started Rebels as I started this game. And then I paused because I was like, okay, that was a lot of Star Wars. And I need to know that I feel connected to this universe a little bit more, maybe, before I finish this game that feels that connected. I'm kind of glad I did a little bit.
Yeah, because there also you get Saul. I mean, for spoilers for Rebels a little bit, but you get those. They keep weaving some of these characters back and forth so that you do feel like, oh, hey, I remember Rogue One.
But you get Saw post this game. So this is Saw before you see him in Rebels, which is pretty cool to be like, oh. So he's like cool in this, like he's like a younger dude who's willing to fight and like take it to the man before he becomes like a weird terrorist. And then way before he becomes the psychopath that he is in Rogue One. But you can see the beginning of it here where he's just like, now we're leaving.
Yeah. Well, it's even more, it's definitely interesting too, because if you watch media as it came out, I forget where you are in Clone Wars right now, because you're still in the midst of it.
I'm almost done with season 4. So we just had a really good arc with Krell on the tour.
Oh,
yeah.
On Krell, the Basilisk Jedi.
The Basilisk Jedi, and they just rescued all the Tortuga, the Ahsoka's people from the slavers. Togrutas, yeah.
Togruta, yeah.
Yeah, so they just rescued all her people.
Okay. I'm trying to remember.
It was a really good. Like that was a really good arc of that show. Like really good.
Oh, yeah. Especially because for me when I started Clone Wars, I was kind of up and down, and the first one that kind of hit for me that really bit onto was the Clone Troopers episode. Like it was all about the clones. It's called Rookies.
Oh, the one where the Fives and Echo and all those guys are training. And they're like, oh, these guys are like photocopies of photocopies, so they're kind of not as good. And so Hardcase is kind of just like a crazy person. I think that episode was like not great for me because I thought at the end of it, why isn't the show this? And then 2 seasons later, we get to that set of episodes with Krell. And we'll talk more about this show with Kit, and I'll probably say this exact same thing, preview, where you get to Krell, and it's kind of like, why isn't the show all about Rex and the other clones? This is good.
Yeah, and
it doesn't need to be about Anakin all the time.
No, yeah, and which is why it's like, okay, that's the tough part about Clone Wars, which we'll talk about, is that sometimes you're like, can I get past this episode about these guys over here? I want to get back to the clones. Like, I want that again.
And so this game kind of hits that speed of like, okay, the game finally introduces us a little bit more to the world and the idea that the Jedi Purge was massive, right? Like, it was a huge damage to the galaxy. But maybe there's some solace in the fact that there will be other movies now and other ideas that Kanan, Ezra, Ahsoka, and Cal Kestis, and Cere Junda, spoilers, are still alive at the end of this. And they're out there in the universe combating. They can't fight Darth Vader or Darth Sidious like a Luke can. They're not part of the class and caliber of Jedi that can handle what Yoda could handle.
Yeah.
But they're out there, and their stories aren't bad, right? Like, their stories, Kanan Jarrus' story is not great until he becomes a master for Ezra. But you have to go through the bad part of Kanan's story to get to him wanting to be a master.
Yeah.
Much like you have to go through the whiny portion of Cal's story to get to the point that the game gets to, which I was alluding to earlier, where you go back to Zepho and Grizz is like, hey, there's a downed rebel ship here, or not rebel, clone ship here. You should probably go check that out for like supplies or whatever. And it becomes the key moment for me on the story of the game where, you don't really need to pick up all these Force echoes unless you want a lot of experience. You don't need to hunt down the Force moments where you would get the like essences or whatever. You don't have to do it.
Yeah.
But if you do it, the moment to do it is inside this downed Jedi cruiser.
Yeah,
because
on Zepho, I think.
On Zepho, because you work your way through a story about 2 Jedi that didn't make it off this cruiser, right? Which is poignant because later in the game, you're going to be the 2 Jedi on a cruiser. Yeah. And one of you doesn't make it.
And that's the thing too, like that I'm like, wait, okay, so I was expecting, I guess we're talking about spoilers anyways. So I was expecting a moment like you get later on when you deal with the fallen Jedi on
Dathomir.
Dathomir.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to run into the Padawan who's gone like, he's going to be the dark shadow.
He's going to be feral.
Yeah, he's feral. He's like, this is what he's done. This is how he's lived.
Right.
And they don't give you that, that's fine because it's like the story they give you through the echoes and everything is great too.
Right.
But like that's what I thought they were going to do, but they kind of swerved a bit and they gave you a slightly different story, which is great.
Yeah, they did. They really did. I kind of, like you, expected to find someone, a live person at the end of this. I didn't expect to find a dark Jedi or like a gray Jedi or something at the end of it. I expected to find like a person to talk to that would just be like an end of the story, a master who just won't fight anymore kind of thing. But it's a good ending for that moment where it's the Padawan doesn't make it, right? Like,
yeah,
it doesn't make it. And so you've got a triad of stories in this of Cere takes on another apprentice basically in your character Cal, and you have second sister, which is her old apprentice. So you do have a foil, and the foil doesn't happen through Cal possibly turning to the dark side. They nip that in the bud by sending you to Dathomir, where you do run into the fallen Jedi, which is the next real big moment for that, right? Because Dathomir is where you start to explore. Where do you hit Order 66? You hit that just after Dathomir Part 1.
Yeah, well, like, yeah, depending on how many times you go back. But, like, there's the major event is after you talk to... Oh, God, I can't remember his name.
So you have to go... You have to talk to Fallen Jedi guy, who clearly is Fallen Jedi guy, even though you meet him and he's in a robe and he's like, I'm just an archaeologist. And you're like, yeah, shut up, you're a Fallen Jedi, I can tell already.
Yeah, Karen Malicos.
Malicos, that's right. Can we just fight
Malicos,
now?
Really?
Malicos. Malicos, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we just fight now? Because I see you.
Yeah.
Like, there's no question. Why are we just not fighting now? But no, we'll go through this whole thing where I jump over there and then get knocked off a branch and then have to go through zombies and a swamp and then climb all the way back up here. And, oh, you're missing. Oh, shocker. I guess I'll go into the evil temple. And there you are.
Yeah.
So on Dathomir, you do run into Joro Tapal in a vision. And the vision is like, hey, you betrayed me. Which is you confronting your fears a little bit, right? Of like, he feels like he's the failure because he's the kid that... But you don't know why you feel like a failure. You assume you feel like a failure because you betrayed your master or something that you're going to find out in a story later. But then you have to fight Malicos and run off the planet or be killed by zombies. Which is like, okay.
You're the first... That's when I remember you... reached out to me. I did. Chat. You're like,
I did.
Zombies?
I was like, really?
And they say zombies.
They literally say this word. They literally, Grizz is like, we gotta run from the planet of crazy zombies. And you're like, oh god, just come up with a better word than zombies for Star Wars. And that story ends in a cool place I didn't expect, but you have to leave the planet with your broken lightsaber, right?
Yeah.
And go to Ilum to get your new one, and the moment of failure on Ilum, I think, is when you confront Order 66. Is that right?
It's I want to say it's when you come back, but I'm trying to remember now because unfortunately it's been a couple months since I played.
I think you have to break your lightsaber in Dathomir Part 1, right?
Yeah,
because that's why you have to run. You have to run off the planet because you don't have a lightsaber. And then you're all bummed out about it. And yeah, and then you go to Ilum, and that's where you confront your past on the Jedi cruiser. Finally. Yeah. Because it's like your moment of failure when you try to get your crystal and it breaks. Although it still works. I don't.
Well, yeah.
What is that about?
Fractures, but it's because he's. I mean, it works. It works gameplay wise because then you have two lightsabers. It splits.
Yeah.
So much. Yeah. So it's
but
okay.
He needed that one, and then it broke in half, and it was still okay. I don't know. It's very confusing. Yeah. But you confront Order 66, and I thought it was just going to be a cutscene, and it turns into a good 15-minute gameplay scenario, which I did not expect to be as powerful for me as it was, where you see your master betrayed by his clone commander, who you've been interacting with in these flashbacks.
And they're your friends.
They're your friends.
They do a good job of doing like, hey, kid, he's waiting for you.
Yeah, multiple flashbacks where you are chatting with clone troopers. They know who you are. They're your bud, just like you see in Clone Wars. You get how attached these people are to him and what they're gonna do to him, even though they don't want to, right?
Yeah.
And it's like playing through a cutscene almost, but you have to kill clone troopers. And you're just like, this sucks. It doesn't suck like so much that I'm crying or something, but like you get that this really sucks for a kid.
And it also helps to inform
Meanwhile, T'Pol is
on.
in other scenes, and I want you to jump back in, but like you also get the sheer brutality of a Jedi Master against clone troopers, because there are scenes where you're on the other side of glass or something, and he's just straight up cutting down 10, 15, 20 dudes. It's really powerful.
Yeah. And it also helps for me to solve a little bit of the issue I had initially, because not that every Jedi needs to be a tree hugger, so to speak, but as Cal, you have little to no problem just tearing troopers asunder.
Yeah.
And there's times where I'm like, this is weird that he's so willing to fight. And there's that first moment when you do interact with Joe Paul, Jaren T'Pol, the shadow of him,
right?
And I'm like,
the evil shadow of him, where he's like, you have to attack me.
Yeah, and I'm like, again, this is another time where I stood there and I'm like,
yeah, I did the same thing.
Do you have the option? Do you?
Yeah,
because it's like this isn't the Jedi way, right? Like I've watched, I don't want to do that. Is that an option?
Right.
And the game's just like,
no, you gotta fight him. You don't. you cannot get out of this scene unless you attack him. And that's where I thought the game for me was very much like Knights of the Old Republic, where it was like, okay, this kind of linear thing where you jump around planets or whatever, but I don't have the choice not to fight. Yeah. I have to fight. I can't sneak. I can't talk. I can't do anything. I have to fight. And I did the same exact thing you did. I was like, no, that's my master. This is a test. This is clearly a test. The first time you see him, he's trying to egg you into fighting him, so I'm just going to stand here and see what happens. And he just stands there, and you're like, I'm just hearing the same things over again. I guess I have to attack him. And you attack him, and the story progresses. And it's like, well, that's kind of a bummer, but I get it. But yeah, you're right. So you go through Order 66 as this kid. You watch your master die in front of you.
Yeah. And you get to learn all these little bits of things that you might have had questions about, like, like your lightsaber is broken at the pommel. Yeah. And you're like, why is that? Why is it like that? And then as the story, this moment presents itself, you're like, oh, you lost, because you're going through that mission part, and you lose your own lightsaber. And I'm like, oh, yeah, because I think yours is a different color too.
It looks a lot more like Sears, and it's green, I think. Yeah. And it looks more like Sears. It's very standard. It's like, a kid built a lightsaber, right? Or maybe it's a training saber or whatever. It's just basic lightsaber. And there's a moment where you're in this was one of those ones where I was like, man, this sucks so bad. I feel so bad. But if you don't do anything, you got to start over, because you'll get killed. They will kill you. But like, you're in this reactor core, because Paul's like, you gotta get in there and like do the thing, and so we can get off the ship. We gotta blow it up. And they start shooting at you in a reactor core, and you're in like it's like a fish in a barrel moment. And if you don't reflect back or force pull those troopers, they kill you. And so then you're climbing up there, and he drops his saber. But luckily you get saved by an explosion, which kills the trooper that's gonna kill you. Anyway, it's a really good moment, and it's not as powerful. It's not the most powerful moment in the game, actually, because it comes when you go back to Dathomir, right? Which is what you were alluding to, which is it comes full circle. Yeah, you go back to Dathomir. You finally learn. Your character does for you the thing you wanted to do. If you are a somewhat fluent member of the Star Wars universe, you know what a Jedi would do. And so he learns to be a Jedi and doesn't fight T'Pol. And I thought the next moment, you have to do all this stuff on Dathomir. You get the Night Sister at that moment. The moment you get the Night Sister is when I finally got the thing answered that I wanted answered, which is, why are we getting the holocron? Oh. Why don't we leave it in the ground? Like, we have the thing, the only other thing that would allow anyone to get the holocron, put a lightsaber through it. Right?
I think it's just because it's like, if you don't, they'll find it they'll find another way to get to it.
I guess.
God, it's bad. It's bad that I can't. Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
But he has to unlock the doorway, and the doorway is one of those magical ones that Rey touches, right? And later in the other one, and which was another cool callback. I like that. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We've seen this before in one of the films, right? Like you touch the black ink and then you go to the other side or whatever. But if you just broke the thing, and the Night Sister says that, she's like, are you sure you want to do this? Because, like, bad things could happen because you do this. You could just leave it alone and let the universe handle it. That's the Night Sister way, which didn't pan out for the Night Sisters. They all died. But, she brings up a good point, which actually is a really good point, because you get ambushed and the second sister steals the holocron for you. But I thought the best scene in the game here actually is on Bogano with the flash forward of like stoic scenes. I don't know what you want to call it, but like frozen scenes.
Yeah, of like what could happen. You
encounter what would happen, right? Or I guess what could, right? Yoda would say, "Oh, there are infinite futures or whatever. Nothing's set." Blah blah blah. But the future that he sees when he goes through to get the holocron, and I guess it's a warning, maybe, right? He doesn't get the holocron right away. He has to go through this moment of like, oh, Master Kestis, you're training us. Oh, Master Kestis, we love you. Into like, oh my God, the Empire's here. How did they find us? Oh, they're killing children literally in front of me. It's not good. Stop doing that. How do I go backwards and make it unhappen? No, I have to keep going forwards and they're still killing children. They've captured me now. This isn't good. Into Cal becoming an Inquisitor because he gets turned, because he probably would be, right? Like, yeah, I thought about that for a minute and I'm like, I wouldn't do that. No, I wouldn't allow that to happen. But there's the moment where you realize, like, Cal's not me. He's not a Jedi Master. This would happen. Like, I fully believe. And then, his kids are in cages and he's betrayed them and you feel really, really bad.
That's the thing, too. You learn, I mean, this is, I guess, outside knowledge, too, from the comics. You learn that pretty much all of the Inquisitors are all just previous Jedis, all turned Jedis.
Yeah.
And so it's like, mathematically, they pretty much all turned. Like, that was the strength of the torture.
And so
this is, to turn them.
This is a thing that I did not. I'm very glad that I watched Rebels, and I'm very glad that I watched the Clone Wars at this moment in the game, because I was like, well, there's like 9 now. There's like Jedi on every side. This is baloney, right? Like, the main story of Star Wars is that there's one Sith and one apprentice, and this doesn't make any sense. And you don't get the feeling that even all the way back, they've rewritten a lot of this stuff. Darth Maul dies, and then you get Count Dooku. But if you watch Clone Wars, Darth Maul and Count Dooku are around at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? And like, Ventress is around. Right? And so this theory of the way the Sith work isn't that there's not a master and apprentice. The apprentice gets these, Force sensitives to become their personal servants, but they're not allowed to train them in the ways of the Force. They just have to, like, turn them into little attack dogs, which is kind of what the Knights of Ren, I guess, are probably also. I don't have
teach them enough to make them dangerous. Teach
them enough and hand them a lightsaber and let them go, but make sure they're not this other thing. So if you watch the other media, like, it's a lot better than if I had just tried to accept this game on its own merits and be like, oh, so there's Inquisitors? Like, why aren't they just Sith Jedi? Or whatever. Like, it's very confusing until you kind of see later on, like, there's this whole sub-faction of the Sith Order, which is taking Jedi and breaking them and removing them of the ability to become more than just assassins and do, fighters or whatever.
There's also an idea, too, that they don't teach them enough because they don't want to make them a not a weakness, but a they don't want them to raise themselves up to be try and overtake them.
Right.
Like Palpatine is just like I'm Anakin's my apprentice, and I even keep him on a tight leash so that he doesn't try and overtake me.
Right.
But even more so, we keep the Inquisitors like they're rung below that.
Yeah.
They're never a threat to me.
Yeah, well, that's why, that Ventress, they try to kill Ventress in Clone Wars, right?
Yeah.
Because she's getting too powerful. So, that was good to see. And it's good to see it in this game where they explore. It's only been X years since the Purge. These are that's the second sister. That's the second Inquisitor, right? It's not the 9th sister. It's not the 29th sister. That's it. This is the second time they've turned somebody into an Inquisitor. So the process of doing that it becomes the latter half of this game. You find out what happened to Seer, how they turned the second sister, the horrible stuff they did to all of them is part of this game. And like this game becomes about like this trauma that these characters are going through instead of being about a Star Wars. And it's really refreshing for it to be about characters and not about, okay, so just like go over there and do the lightsaber thing. Yeah.
And it's also interesting too because we didn't even I can't believe we completely went past it, but we also on Baraka from the very beginning, there's also the 9th sister.
Yeah.
And she has her own character and her own feel to her separate from the second sister. Like the second sister she's far more threatening with doing far less in terms of like her presence.
They did.
Like, she just exudes strength, whereas like the 9th sister is like rage, and she's imposing because of her size and her power, but like it's two different types.
I'm glad you brought it up. There's two things. There's one is I totally got it right away. They do such a good job with the character. Just the first time you see him, even in the helmets, you get that the big one is not the scary one. The little one's the scary one, right?
Yeah.
Like she's physically imposing, and as you play against them over the course of the game, and you encounter 9th sister more early on, you kind of get like they did a better job with her than maybe they did with second sister, because this one's completely just brainwashed, right? Like she's just like gung ho. I am a monster and I want to kill you. And so, like, when you shove her out of that tree, I literally was just like, yes, I did it.
Get out of here.
I'm the best Jedi. I had that moment. Like, I set the controller down. I was like, yes, I beat a hard boss battle. And then also I kicked the butt of an Inquisitor. And then I was like, but I had that moment after I beat her that I was just like, there is no way the second sister is anywhere near that easy. And it's true. We didn't talk about her her design really, but you fight her 3 times. It's very cool, I think. The whole like I fought her 3 times and all 3 times I had a good shot at beating her. I had enough stims. I had figured her process out. I don't know what would have happened if she had gotten to another phase. Like the fights have phases, each of them, where the boss changes up on you and starts doing new stuff. I guess maybe the final phases would have been harder, but like I had a good pace for beating these fights with her, and then they interrupt them with a cutscene. Did you like that or hate that?
I did. The second one, because I mean, if I think we're bringing it down into the first time you meet her on the train, the second time.
So the first time I was thinking of, you don't fight her on the train, really, right?
True.
You fight her on Zepho in the cavern on Zepho.
Yes. Okay.
That's the first time. The second time is on Bogano when she steals the thing from you, and then the third time on the final planet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then Zepho was the one where it was pissing me off because like,
you're winning, right?
I'm winning, but also like that was a lot of the like, no, I waited until she started to swing, so I know I hit that button to parry. So and that was the biggest time where I was just like, something's wrong with this connection, and it's not hitting the right tempo for me. And I'm learning the tempo. And so with like when she knocks me out or knocks me aside, and then BD1, which I can't believe we talked this long and haven't talked about the love of BD1, but then BD1 saves you. I'm like, thank you, BD1. I'm so tired of this mission right now.
BD1 is awesome. I don't know how to describe how cool I think he is as a droid. There are droid designs that I hate because they make no sense. There are droids that I hate because they have a personality that makes no sense. And there's no droids that I'm just like straight up in love with, really. I mean, R2 and C-3PO are classic, and they have a special place for me as a Star Wars fan. There will be no replacing those two characters ever. But I don't think there's been a connection in a game, especially, or like any media of like, I don't like Chopper that much, to be honest. Like, he's kind of annoying.
Okay. Yeah, that's his character. So
that is his character, and I don't begrudge that that's what they wrote. And I think that he was a goodish character. The Clone Wars is doing nothing for me on like making R2 or C-3PO better. They're good droids. I like R2 and
fair.
I like R2 a lot because of the cool nature of him kind of being around through both him and Luke. Like, that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
But BD, it's a boy and his dog moment.
Yeah.
And Cal is a boy that needed a dog.
Yeah. And he's very much he's the Robin character there who's like, oh, you're here so he has someone to exposition to and to communicate with,
right,
and express his emotions and get him out from a storytelling standpoint. But because it is that personality of like a pet, it's so endearing, and like as little, like, it's funny because you say like design too. It's like there's little bits of like, okay, he almost looks a little bit like a ATST.
Yeah, a little bit. Like a tiny ATST.
Yeah. And then he's also got some, like, almost want to say Johnny Five head movements to him.
Yeah, a little bit. Read.
Yeah, and so it's like there's certain things, and the sound design on him is so pitch perfect.
It's very
like
good.
It's so good.
It's odd maybe that he doesn't have like working arms, like T-Rex arms or something like that.
Yeah, but he does so well with those legs.
He does them with the legs pretty well, and that's good. I think that's good that he has a design. He has a design you don't have to figure out the function of, and you don't have to figure out how to get around the dumb design you made. Like, how is all that stuff rattling around inside BB-8?
Yeah.
Inside his ball and not breaking all the time.
Yeah.
You know, like, BD-0 is cute, but like, who needs a droid that's on a wheel, on a unicycle wheel? You know?
Oh, Dio?
Dio, yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
That astromechs are good for being astromechs. C-3PO makes a little sense because he can't go upstairs. Like, but yeah, but
they have lifts in the world. They're fine.
Yeah. But BD1 is clutch. First of all, they did a great job writing him into the story, not as just the guy you need to zipline or to slice or whatever. Because, like, I could just get a slicing amulet or what, you know, there's some puzzles where you would need to stand here and have him go there or whatever. But, like, it's not, gameplay-wise, it's not a thing they had to have. But I was most excited when I got BD skins or I got him more stims. When I got him more stims, it was like I had gotten him like, oh, BD, I found you a bone. Look. You know, like when I finally got all of his stims, like I filled him up and he was full up of stims. I was like, dude, you are now complete.
And he's so happy about it.
He's so happy.
And then when you find out his story and his relation to Cordova,
so good.
And then like essentially the choice this droid had to make.
Yeah,
it's like you loved him already. You're like, oh, he's awesome. But now you're like, you must never leave me. Like, I need you. Which I absolutely love that the Black Series figure comes with the BD-1.
It had to. Oh my god, I've been so mad.
Yeah.
I'd have been so mad. I have considered building a life-size BD1 to just have around. I feel
you can. Yeah,
I can find a
kits
way
on
to
Etsy.
do that. I'm sure I can do it. I'm sure I can do it.
Yeah.
God, now I just want to talk about BD1. The Cordova moment was good because I hated Cordova, and I hate him more because of what he did to BD. Right? But like,
it's understandable.
But I hated him until the moment where I realized, like, oh, I'm like not looking at him as these weren't messages to me. Like, yeah, he sent messages through BD to me, but like it wasn't messages to me. It was messages to BD.
Yeah.
My friend is not me. When he says my friend, he's talking to BD.
Yeah.
And
it's so good.
And so like you went through a lot of the game thinking like, oh, my friend. He's saying my friend because he doesn't know who the person is that will find BD, and you get this attachment to BD like he's a tool and a dog and all that kind of stuff. And then like, yeah, the moment where you're just like, oh my god, he was best friends with this droid, and the droid chose to mind wipe to be my best friend, but he didn't know who I was gonna be. Ah! Very well written, very good.
There's also on a side note, one thing too that I liked because I liked the actor who plays him.
Oh yeah, I love the actor that plays Cordova, and he does a great job. Great job. I just story wise, you start to hate him because you're like, what were you doing? Like, why didn't you help?
Yeah. Well, I guess we can cover that more in our 4th spinoff podcast for Stargate.
Oh,
so
yeah.
when we do the 4th.
We'll just come back and during the Stargate podcast. I almost would rather do a Stargate podcast than a Battlestar podcast. So that can be the 3rd spinoff?
Okay, fair enough.
Because that has legs.
Sorry.
That's SG-1 has legs. Hey, there's a cat.
Yes.
SG-1 has legs. It really does.
Yeah.
Man, we got to finish the story though. Okay. So I think we covered kind of pretty much everything except the last planet.
The last planet being the Inquisitorius?
Is Inquisitorius.
Okay.
Did you
For those at home, I'm holding a cat. I apologize.
It's fine. Did you feel ready for what happened there to those characters?
Oh no!
Ignoring the big reveal. Forget the big reveal, but like, there's a moment where you walk into that, and Seer has decided she's going to help you because you have to get the holocron back, which is a really good moment. She's like, and I'm back in the Force, and she picks up the lightsaber that obviously does harm to you, right? Like mental harm to you as Cal Kestis.
Yeah.
And then can't imagine what it would do to Seer, who sees the visions of her apprentice.
Well, she wouldn't see the visions. I mean, she'd have the memories, but she doesn't have psychometry. Like, she doesn't have that same power.
You don't think that when she picked that... okay, so you think that that's just because of who you are? You picked that up and you got a Force echo from it?
Yeah, you got the Force echoes of it from it because it's your...
Oh, okay.
You have that power.
I kind of figured like that thing was so powerful that like when Seer grabbed it, she was going to have the emotions of... I mean, she probably still had a lot of emotions holding on to the lightsaber of her fallen apprentice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's a cool thing that she doesn't... that you don't give her old lightsaber back, right? Like...
Yeah.
You don't try to integrate the Sith saber and give Seer her saber. She's like, no, this is me now because I have to wear this burden and use this saber. But like Cal even goes through a thing before the end of this where you're just ripping stormtroopers apart, right? Like everything hinges on getting that holocron back. And while it's not like dark side stuff you're doing, I would wonder about how much of a dark side stuff you're doing.
Yeah. You can take it. He's fine except for little claws. Sorry.
There was a moment there where I went into a room and I was just pulling stormtrooper after stormtrooper onto my blade.
Yeah.
Just like, and you force pull onto this, and you force pull onto this, and you force pull onto this. Reflect, 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 reflect. I think I'd killed probably 50 or 100 people.
Yeah.
And I wondered about that. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, and that's the thing is just Cal. There's no kind of remorse. Like you're of course like a lot of games nowadays, you'll have little like drop in lines and stuff like that, but there's never any kind of like regret to a degree, and so that's kind of an interesting thing because you're kind of like, this is what has to be done.
I think he sees it so black and white that it's like, yeah. I mean, sorry, you're. I'm not using the dark side of the Force to do this, but you're in my way.
Yeah, and we've also I just realized too, we didn't even talk about like kind of the final story with Malicos and where Merrin ends up and how all that plays out.
It's such a small piece, right? Like Malicos is a good character as a foil at the beginning, but literally you come back to Malicos and it's just like, no, Malicos, you're evil and I'm not evil. And then, Merrin's like, oh, see, the Jedi aren't so bad, I guess, maybe. And while it's
I was going to say Merrin's the better, like her story there is more interesting. Like Malicos, like you said, is just kind of like, he's paper thin to a degree. Like
it really isn't that much. It's a good fight. It's a really fun fight. Yeah, because you can't use. It's the first time in the game you can't use your force powers to win a fight. Like you can slow him a little bit, but you can't push or pull or whatever. Yeah, and that's good. And I think, these are all these people are still alive at the end of this game. So Merrin is a better character in a sequel. Yeah. She doesn't get a lot of time. She comes in at the end of this game. The point of her is to almost be a reflection of what Cal, like they both lost, right? So it's better next time if they can explore a relationship. It doesn't have to be a relationship, but like a mutually emotional relationship about rebuilding lives and stuff like that, because they both have lost everything. So I don't know. That's kind of why I didn't focus on it. I think we just got to get to the seminal moment of the game, which is the final fight, right? You work your way through a giant base. You fight every purge trooper, multiple purge troopers, lots of robots, lots of stormtroopers, and you get to the second sister. And that's a hard fight.
That one actually for me was easier than the one on Zepho.
Interesting.
Like that, and it's probably, it makes sense too, because like by that point I've had more time, learned their techniques, I've gotten things better. Like I improved over time, but for some reason when I fought her that time, I'm like, maybe it's because I was more just frantic in that first fight, and I was just like, then it's the same journey Cal has of like, just like, I've just got to fight her to live, to no, I know I can take her, I've got this, and I'm just like, block, sidestep, wait for her to do her unblockable, dodge out of the way, and then go in.
I knew when she started throwing flashbangs that I had won, because I'm like, if this is the hard part of this fight, I'm gonna get flashbanged. I know how to win this, right? And it's like dodge roll, okay, we're good. Slow attack, and then it's pretty good, right? Seer shows up to for the moment where it's like, you could still be good, and she's like, no, I can't.
But avenge us.
Avenge us, though. And that's the end of her. Did you see the next step coming?
I want to say no.
Okay.
I'm trying, because I think that I had expected just to deal with the Inquisitorius. I thought that was going to be.
Yeah.
Was it?
I also thought that would be the end, or that there would be like a, oh my god, all the Inquisitors are coming, we have to run moment, right? I kind of thought the Inquisitor from Rebels might show up.
Yeah, the Grand Inquisitor.
Right, the Grand
showed up.
Yeah. and that we would have to run from the Grand Inquisitor because, you know, Cal is still a Jedi Knight, right? And Seer barely has the Force again. So there's the realization that, I barely beat the second sister. And and I hadn't gotten spoiled on this. Last warning. Darth effing Vader. They do such a good job prepping you in this game for the fact that, you know, like, I'm good at killing stormtroopers now. Yes! And you do get the feeling when he just pops up at the top of that thing, you're just like, there's no way. There's no way, given the fights in this game, that they could make it so that I can beat him. And if they did, I would have been really mad.
Yeah. And then they refresh your memory on that too, because it's like, then like Seer comes in and he's just like, no, you're not. Get out of here. What do you think you're doing?
Yeah, Seer's like, I got this. I'm going to use the dark side and I'm going to fight. Oh, she went down the pit.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not good.
So the plan now is to run.
Well, okay, so here's where we have to take a big pause on this. I had a lot of camera problems again.
Oh.
So when he grabs you, the thing you're supposed to force pull wasn't in the frame. Really? I was looking at his feet. So it took me 3 times of him force pulling me and killing me before I was like, there's got to be something I can do here. Before I was like fighting the camera up into the corner to see the thing to force pull. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, well, that cinematic moment is kind of ruined a little bit. Let's see what the rest of this is. And then I had
present it organically, so it's like you just
Yeah.
You see the seams. You're like, I don't want to. I want you to make it. Yeah.
So the seams split there, part 1. You run out of the room, and the cool moment of like, it's Darth Vader. And so he starts ripping up the room around you as you run was great. Except for camera problem number 2, because I didn't see the wall run you had to do. So I tried to double jump to the platform, which keeps falling away from me. So I have to keep redoing this segment again and again.
Yeah,
until I see the wall run.
I'm reminded of a couple times earlier in the game too, like when you have to do the same kind of like, well, run towards the camera.
Yeah,
and you'll be prompted as it go, right? Like,
no. Good luck.
Like,
yeah, there's a chest that I went back to get in the game that you have to do a complete like 8 or 10 wall runs towards the camera.
Yep.
I'm like, oh god, no.
Like, I just guess I got to remember to go that way when it comes, because you can't turn the camera. You just got to hope.
So this lulls me. I have to tell this story this way, right? Because this lulls me into being like, dang it. Now that I've escaped from him, just wait for it. I know you're already laughing. Because I finished the wall run finally, and I'm like, dang it, man. I'm at the elevator. I finally escaped from him, and like this whole cinematic moment of running away from Darth Vader has been ruined. Dang. And I press the elevator button, and there's Darth Vader standing at the elevator, and I literally jumped, and I was like, oh my god. What is he doing?
One floor.
I was like, go now. I did not expect him to be standing at the exit of the elevator. And then he does the thing, you know, that Anakin does all the time, where he shoves the thing in the elevator door to try and cut it open. Why he's Darth Vader and can't fling the doors back open is beyond me.
There's definitely times where it seems there's times with every Jedi that they forget that they have the Force.
I guess.
Which in our heads, we're just like, I'd be doing that everything. Like I just everything Force.
They set up multiple times that other Jedi are not powerful enough to do blast doors. You know?
Yeah.
Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in the first movie, or the first of the prequel movies, multiple times in Clone Wars. No one can pry open blast doors with the Force for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
happens in video games constantly, just because it's part of the engine they want you to do that with, and it looks cool.
Yeah. So, okay, fine, whatever. That moment was good because I thought the cinematic moment had been ruined. And I literally jumped out of my chair because Darth Vader's still there. And then you go down the thing and they get you again.
Yeah.
They get you again. I literally thought it was like, okay. I thought it was over. That's cool. I bet he shows up at the last minute of this escape or whatever. But when I get off this elevator, I'm going to have to fight a bunch of dudes. And like you fight like 2 dudes. And then he pops through the door again. You're like, how'd you get there? There's no way. I don't understand. And then the most movie thing happens where Seer's not dead. Yay.
If they fall off a platform, they're not them out yet.
They're at worst half Spider-Man if they fall off a platform. Yeah. There's a good moment there where she turns to the dark side immediately to try and fight Darth Vader. And he very, very well... Was that James Earl Jones, by the way? Did we look that up?
I don't know. I'm curious now.
If they got an impersonator, it sounds exactly like him.
I'm looking at... I'm doing the heretic thing of...
I kind of figured you would, but I'll keep talking while you do. The scene there is good because it sounds so much like him that I wasn't taken out of it. If it wasn't him, I wasn't taken out of it by the voice acting. And she turns to the dark side to try and take down Vader, and she's saved by her apprentice because he's like, hey, no, we're not going to do this. There's a choice you can make still. And that is a cool...
That's awesome.
It's a cool theme that is not well-rounded. The story of Anakin is you still can make up for what you've done because there's good in you, but... you don't have a choice of what you've already done and what you could, it's kind of fatalistic that like when the dark Jedi that are in these stories in the other parts of the Star Wars universe have turned, they turn back, but they die. It's like your last act can be good.
Yeah.
It's never, it's,
it's also there's also the anti-point to, like, that Seer was trying to... She's like, I couldn't save my Padawan in the past, but even if it takes me going to the dark side, I will save my Padawan this time. And he's like, no, again, that's not your only option. And also, like, that when she failed by not being able to save her Padawan in the past,
right?
But now her Padawan saves her. Yeah, like she doesn't even see like, oh,
very good symmetry.
It's not that I have to. Yep. It's constantly changing what your expectations are and what you as the character in the world expect from it. Like, this is what's expected of me. What's expected of me is I have to go and kill Darth Vader and I have to kill the Emperor.
Right.
In the end, I turn my father back and together we save the world. Like, it's like the world's telling you, you have to go down this path, and everything in your world is saying, like, that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do to succeed. And it's like, no, like, that's
the story of most Jedi is not saving the galaxy, right? It's making the moral choices that they have to make and doing things on a smaller scale. They can't train a whole new generation of Jedi. They have to destroy the holocron. They have to walk away from it because that's not their the fate doesn't say to them, you are also Luke. You are also Vader. You're not elevated to Starkiller status, right?
Yeah.
You're not a clone of Vader or whatever the heck that story is about. It's really good in that moment when she turns back away and she's not strong enough anymore, and they have to save themselves through the only good instance of swimming in that game.
I forgot about the camera angles when you're trying to swim too, and that's a giant pain in the ass.
I have a mental block about how horrendously slow every section of swimming in that game is, and the fact that they hide chests underwater. No, thank you. Never again. Okay, that's request number 2 for Fallen Order 2. Request number 1, fix the camera problems. Request number 2, just don't. No more swimming. Just don't. I know now why they did it, right? Like the last planet, they were like, it's a water planet and we're going to have swimming. Well, we should add swimming to the rest of the game then.
Yeah, they'll know what to do by the time they get here.
Yeah. And it's like, gurgle. Swimming. So slow. So bad. Not a good swim. God, that ending is so good.
Yeah.
It's a perfect. It's not a circle, right? The circle is she fails. It becomes Seer's story about how she's failed one apprentice and saves the other. And this is like a amoeba almost, right? Or what do you call that? You know, a Mobius. That's what I want to say. Amoeba is a animal like a midichlorian.
Damn it.
Yeah, you didn't know the Force was controlled by amoebas? No, it's a Mobius almost, right? Like it's a cool reverse pattern to change the story so much.
And it does kind of come back into when we come back to our ship. It's like we're kind of in it's kind of a Star Wars, and I mean I guess a lot of stories, a lot of tropes, but like you get back and you're like, okay, well now this is us. This is our new crew, because like I shouldn't say every, but a lot of different Star Wars games and stuff like that, you kind of end up with your crew.
Yeah.
Like when you Force Unleashed, you were Starkiller, the pilot that I can't remember her name right now, and his droid, Proxy.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was your crew, and like and then of course his Jedi Master. So you'd have that like kind of 4-person thing, and like this comes back again in this, and then you have the crew in in Rebels. Like you keep coming back, and it's like it fits, and it feels so good and comfortable, and like, all right, I'm ready for another adventure. Yeah. Where are we going to go from here? What's next that we have to face together?
I would love to see another adventure with this crew after seeing it, because I think there's enough story left in, maybe not in Grizz, but in Seer and in Marin to at least explore other stuff. I hope they can find a segment of the universe for them that's not going to follow the same track. Like, they have to keep them away from the Kanan Jarrus track. They have to keep them away from the Ahsoka Tano track. There needs to be a path if they're going to keep these characters around as here's our game crew for the foreseeable future of like 2 to 3 more of these, or like 1 to 2 more, 2 to 3 total of these games. Yeah. Because you already have the models for them, let's be honest, right? Like we're not going to skin other models. So there's at least one more game with these characters at this point. Where's the part of the universe for them? Is there a huge time jump and we don't know what happened through all the movies, and like, I don't know where you go. I'm sure I could write some ideas down.
Yeah.
Email us.
The thing is, like, I could totally see, I would play a game where you're playing as Marin and she started to study under Seer, and you're trying to find Cal. Like, what happened to Cal?
What happened to Cal? Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I would do that.
And so it's like, we know that Marin is Force sensitive.
She's also got cool powers.
Yeah.
She can make ships disappear.
And how does these new learnings, does the training come from a fallen Jedi who has touched the dark side, work with an apprentice who has also touched different, forbidden techniques of the deck? Right. How does that play out for Seer now?
Mm-hmm.
And then especially if Cal's not there to be like, oh no, you got to stay on this path. Like, Cal's missing. We need to find Cal. but he left behind BD1, so
no, never would. That wouldn't happen. No, no.
Well, that's how you know he's in trouble.
Yeah,
like that's
Cal and Grizz went somewhere while Seer and Marin were training. Grizz comes back in a different ship that's not the Mantis.
Okay.
I'm not in love with the Mantis, to be honest. I don't understand what that wing is doing. It's all over the place. It's up in space. It like kind of comes down, but then it goes back up again. It seems like an airfoil. It's not like a wing. I don't understand what that thing is doing. I feel like in Star Wars, I feel like every ship is like, how do we stick an S-foil on this? Like, where's the moving part on this ship, The one that will always bother me the most is the one Dooku departs in Attack of the Clones. Solar sail?
What's up? Yeah, solar sail.
Solar sail? Yeah.
There's no wind. What do you...
Oh, yeah, there's wind in space. Solar sails are a real thing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Solar sails are a real thing. However, solar winds are not like... You don't just go, right?
Yeah.
So, that ship, the thing that bothers me about that ship, if you want to get into it, is it still has an engine on the back of it.
Yeah.
So why solar sails? Because you're constantly gaining momentum, and in this universe, if you need the solar sail to gain that momentum, that means the other ships are faster than you, which means it's a really bad ship to try and escape in. And also, can it go to hyperspace?
Yeah.
The sail is a real thing. The sail on that ship is not a good thing.
Yeah. There's so much in that last bit of that movie. I mean, we're diverging now, but like...
Yeah, that might mean we're at the end.
Yeah.
I think that's good. I think we talked about... Oh no. What'd we do?
It's more of a complaint than anything else.
Okay.
The unlockables in this are so lackluster. Aside from the...
I hear you.
Like, it's just... They're not even, like, new outfits. It's just
all colors, palette swaps. I think that is request 3, but 3 is like 1 and 2 are really important.
Yeah.
No swimming and fix the camera. Request 3 is like 50 spots down for just ditch the ponchos.
Yeah, I didn't want to wear them at all.
I wore one poncho. It was the smallest one so that I could see most of Cal, and it was the one that I was like, this one wouldn't interfere with fighting with a lightsaber. This is the only one that makes sense. And then I eventually just took that one off because I was like, I don't see all the cool stuff they animated on Cal's body.
Yeah, all the gear and stuff that he has, like, I like that.
They did a really good job. Half the stuff on him jingles and jangles everywhere he goes. So when you're fighting, it's moving around, and it's like, why am I missing this for a poncho? So I eventually took that stuff off, and yeah, there's 5 different reskins for his main pilot's outfit, and the only one of them that's any good is blue and black, because the other ones are like hideous to look at. Why would you wear white? Yellow makes no sense, and the green forest one is kind of like dingy and gross. So it's kind of weird. I wish the Mantis reskins are cool, because the Mantis is huge in a lot of the backdrops on Dathomir. You get to see it a lot, but it's not that important, I guess.
Yeah.
And honestly, most of them aren't better than the stock one. Yeah. The gold leader one you get for the special edition is really good. So BD1 skins,
primary. That's like BD1 is up there. Well, and lightsaber. Lightsaber is so much fun because you make your own lightsaber.
I get it. Right, like that. But BD1 skins, number 1. Yeah. Lightsaber stuff, very good. Number 2. Then they need to do a bunch of instead of palette swaps, switch out the gear on Cal or something.
That's one thing we finally got. We got in the update they released maybe 2-3 weeks before this podcast. they added some additional palette swaps, which I don't think is important, but they did unlock in one of his visions towards the end of the game. He appears as if he would have become a Inquisitor.
Yeah.
You can play with that Inquisitor armor throughout the game in the New Game Plus mode, and I'm like, that's cool and all, but one, modders had already done that and unlocked that and put it out there for a mod for PC gamers, but then they also added a palette swap to that. So what would it like if it was Jedi armor?
Oh,
So it's all white. Yeah,
give me that.
Instead of the Imperial sigil, it's the Jedi Temple one, and I'm like, that's engaging. Like, I'd play through in that. Like, I don't have, I from playing too many games. I want the Paragon. I want to see what that version looks like.
Right, sure.
Like, so like when we were talking about the path, like the fact that you do things that are very against what you would think would be the Jedi ideal.
Right.
Is we've played games where we've had Knights of the Republic and Dishonored and BioShock, where it's like, oh, I want a little bit of a choice here. What is the choice if I play this a little darker? And like, I kind of want that from a Star Wars game, but it's not always necessary. And
I think in this one they had a very specified character story, right? And Cal has to get to a place in this game for you to feel like it makes sense, the story they've told, and for you to have like, if you could just like be dark side, then what's the fear of running into Darth Vader? What's the moral impetus for telling Seer not to turn? So I get why you can't make certain moral choices. I wish there were scenes where you could already have gotten to the play. Like, I would play this game more like, well, I don't want to kill all these stormtroopers. I just want to go. I want to sneak around them because like I'm a light side guy and I wouldn't want to kill all these people or whatever. And so like, oh yeah, you get all the same experience you would if you can find a way to sneak through this camp or whatever. Maybe that could get added to this game, but I think in the next game you could very definitely add in a system of like a slightly lighter dark on the gray side, right? Like Cal's still going to be Cal, but like maybe you could be a little bit more of a like ruffian Cal.
Yeah. And like as I played it, so many of my comparisons were to Star Wars Force Unleashed.
Yeah.
And I think that the parallels as far as the scale of the game, as far as what they were expecting to do and trying to do is there. But one thing that I love that they did with that was they gave you a ton of different complete skins and models to switch from. Like you could play as, and it was already built into the game. So it's like you started in his kind of apprentice rags.
Right.
And then you went to a planet that was another junk planet. And so you had more of a toxic suit thing. And so visually you had a lot of change, and I really enjoyed that. I got none of that from this, and I would have liked some of that opportunity. And then also because they want your money, there's also DLC, so you could play as different, like if you wanted to, you could load up and play as Obi-Wan Kenobi. It wouldn't change the dialogue or anything, just the aesthetics. And I'm like, if that's what I want, if I just want a visual difference, give me that. Like I don't. Yeah. But again, it's a lot of work, and I get that. It's just one of those things where it's like the expectation was set by a previous game, so it's kind of like, I kind of want that, but I understand why they didn't. So
I'm not. It's not a thing I would want on a first playthrough. I would want to play it the way they designed it, and like, oh yeah, I know I'm supposed to be Cal, but I look like Obi-Wan would not be like my first choice. I definitely agree though that like, hey, Cal didn't do all this in a day. Why is he still wearing the same stuff he was wearing on Braca? Like. So, they didn't go to a planet and get some more clothes. They didn't, there's no moment of like, maybe he doesn't have to wear this dingy outfit anymore. And you could change it to something else. There's a chance for that they could build into this. And, now they've got all the models. They could do that in a second game. I'm not precluding it. I got enough out of this, especially for the price I paid for it, because I got it on sale during Christmas, that like I really have no qualms with it. I guess it's a long enough game as it is, and the way they locked the cosmetics is difficult enough. that I wouldn't see all of them because I'm not going to go back and get them. So, it'd have to be stuff you built in as DLC or whatever eventually. And that's maybe the only way I would see it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And that's the thing is if it was a different costume, even if it's not even changing the characters, it's just the outfit. So you play through him wearing Jedi robes, or you play through him wearing Stormtrooper armor. Like, if you give me those, I'm gonna swim to the bottom of that lake to get that new, that new outfit.
I'll try. I know you would.
But I'm less intrigued to go back and be like, oh, now my poncho's yellow.
Yeah, it's like I'm not. That's what I realized, right? It's like I found the poncho I liked the most.
Yeah.
There's 9 other ponchos I didn't look at, but I beat the game already, so I'm not gonna go get a poncho I'm not gonna look at for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Right? Why would I go spend Why would I go spend an hour running across Kashyyyk to go get a BD1 skin when I already have one that I love?
Yeah.
I found 3 maybe,
Yeah.
that I really,
the
really
BD1
liked.
skins, those BD1 skins I did change because he's always with you. So it's like I changed him more than I changed my own clothes.
I often found myself changing him based on the planet that I was on so I could see him more easily.
Okay, yeah.
It was like if we were on Ilum, I didn't want him in white.
Yeah. Because you wanted him to stand up, like, okay, he's over there, or when he pops up, you'll be like, hey, you got to scan this area. You're like, okay.
I'll be like, oh, I see him.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I enjoyed his unlocks more than I liked, the fact, oh, well, now this is a green tunic.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Bummer.
Yeah.
Little bummer, not big bummer.
Yeah, not. I still enjoyed the game. I still finish it, and I would buy a second. I would buy, Jedi Fallen Order 2.
Yeah, absolutely. They got to get the same writing team back on it because they have a good voice for those characters, and they know where they ended up. Really, I think they really had a strong thesis for where they wanted those characters to be. You could see when you get to the end how they built it from the beginning.
Yeah.
And yeah, okay. I mean, it's slightly predictable, but it's not. There's a good turn. The Marin stuff.
There's still surprises.
Yeah, the Marin stuff's predictable. This is that's predictable. Got it, right? You're gonna fight. That guy's a fallen Jedi. You're gonna fight him later. You're gonna beat him. You could probably guess that the second sister is at least gonna help you beat him, if not more than that. Or not the Night Sister, right? Marin.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of points of this story that are believable. There's a lot of it that you run through the same area again and you're like, I know how to beat this area and I don't want to do it anymore. The repetitions there's a lot of stuff you could point to and be like, that part needs tweaking, that part needs tweaking. I think they built a good enough game overall. They built enough separate environments on these planets that they were going to Kashyyyk was awesome. It was awesome. I was like, this is a really good version of this Kashyyyk thing, and then Ilum's a little boring. And I like that
you. Yeah, I want to say I think you meet Tarful.
Yes,
but I'm glad you don't see Chewbacca.
Oh, I'm glad, no thanks.
It didn't feel the need to be that. That's one thing. In Revenge of the Sith, it's I'm glad Tarful's there. I could have done with if it would have been Lobaka or someone. We didn't have to have Chewie there.
Yeah.
So it's I like that we saw familiar faces with Saul and Tarful, but we didn't have to be hey guys, don't forget
this is Star Wars. Yeah, and that's what I've made this point a lot. Star Wars is at its best when it's a tertiary connection. Rogue One has Mon Mothma in it, and C-3PO makes a joke, and Darth Vader's at the end of it, and Akbar's in one scene. But those are other than the Darth Vader scene at the end, and the fact that there's Tarkin plays a big enough role, but Jimmy Smits is a side character. Jimmy Smits is a side character in most of it. I mean, he's a big character in Clone Wars, and so it's really cool later when you're like, cool, he's a big character in Clone Wars, awesome. But but that's taking tertiary characters and not being Chewbacca's here. And you're like, yeah, but what are you doing with Chewbacca? You're just putting him in there to make a story about Trandoshans.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't need to be Chewbacca. I guess that one maybe you want to be Chewbacca, I guess.
Yeah, so you have a little more history, but still, like, it's
although
lot more, like...
Yeah. But it's not like Ahsoka Tano came back in the movies when the Chewbacca's there. You know what I mean? Because then you could have that moment where you're like, oh, okay.
Chewie, I remember. Yeah.
Like, oh, we met during the Clone Wars. Yeah, I saw that episode. That's really cool. Good callback. But they don't have that because you can't do that because it's a show. It's not the movies. And so when things are not directly going to be connected, don't connect them.
It's also a good thing on the flip side too. Like when you see when you've watched all of Rebels and then you see Rogue One, and then you're like, "Oh shit, is that the Ghost?"
Yeah,
like the Ghost was over Scarif. Like that means Hera was there. Like you just, and it's like hypothetically, I mean, it could have just been another ship, but they later say like, "Oh no, that was the Ghost."
Or the super tertiary connection of like Rex is on Endor. You know?
Yeah.
Like, good. That's great. I like that. Like they took that dude's look and they used it so that it was tertiary connection. Right? It's like, no, it's not some main character from another thing that you're like square peg round holing into this scenario. Yeah. Anyway, so I think that it's another example of like Star Wars is really hits home when they can tell a story outside using what Star Wars is, right? Like yeah. There we go. Yeah. That's it, man. This is a good game. Make another one, please. So that I can have another reason to play a Souls game.
Yeah.
I liked it. I really, even that the combat grew on me eventually. Like the first time you take down something hard and then you go back to a planet an hour and a half, 2 hours later, and you're just like, easy. Psh, I didn't even die to that.
You freaking frog. You cost me.
You cost me an hour and a half before I knew how to beat you. But now that I've come back at the end of the game, you should run.
Yeah.
And he didn't, and he died.
Try and catch me with your tongue. Force, that, done.
Did you know you can cut the tongues off those things?
Yes.
I did not know that until the very end of the game. And I was like, what?
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to catch them. One, they have to be weakened enough, but then also you have to catch it like in the right like maneuver. So, but yeah,
crazy. It's a weird, like little thing that they added. That's kind of cool. Yeah. All right, man. Well, we did 2.5 hours on Fallen Order, so we're a tenth of the way to finishing the game. You want to play through the rest of it?
There you go. Yeah.
No, it's good. It was good. It was a good game to talk about, and I'm glad I didn't have to bore the other dudes on the podcast with it because I really wanted to put that much time. Not maybe 2 hours, but I want. It's that good for me. It reignited. Those movies definitely put a damper on my Star Wars.
Yeah.
Not because it's my Star Wars, not because like people aren't allowed to like them, because it just they didn't land for me the way they did for other people, and so I feel slightly left out of Star Wars in the modern era when it's going to start to be made for people that are younger than me. And this feels like it's like, no, it's cool. There's other Star Wars for you. And it's like, okay, cool. All right. I'm good with that. Like if that's for them and this is for me, then sure. We can still live in the same universe and I can be interested in it again.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fun of them continuing to tell stories where some people are like, oh, I'm going to get tired of all the Star Wars. I'm like, I don't see that happening for me. Like Mandalorian is amazing.
Mwah.
And yeah, chef kiss. Mwah. And like wrapping up season 7 of Clone Wars, I'm just like, oh no, like it's like even if there's arcs where like people are like, oh well, why this here? I'm like, I can see from a storytelling standpoint why this is here, so I'm fine with it because then I get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Right on, man. Thanks for doing this with me. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Let's do more Star Wars. What do you say?
For sure. I think we should.
I need to start exploring what's out there in the Disney-verse.
Yeah, I'm down.
Right on.
We can talk about comics, novels. I get all kinds of stuff to feed you.
Oh, yeah. Feed me. I'm hungry. Hey, if you agree, and don't bother if you don't agree with our takes on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, podcast at wewergamers.com, or you could hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, leave a YouTube comment. Places where podcasts or videos are is a good place to go, and we'll engage with it. Engage is the wrong term because that's Star Trek. We will what if that's just the outro?
We will.
Just the music goes. Oh.
Yeah, just some copyrighted music. Dun, dun.
Look, if you got bad takes, I know what to do with them. They'll go and get frozen in carbonate.
There you go.
And we'll figure out what to do with the good takes later.